Yes. Is the slide visible in the presentation mode?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I will commence with an invocation. योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं श्रीमते अनन्ताय नागराजाय नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्णवागीशयतीश्वराभ्यां सम्प्राप्तचक्राङ्कणभाष्यसारं श्रीनूत्नरङ्गेन्द्रयतौ समर्पितस्वं श्रीकृष्णमार्यं गुरुवर्यमीडे विरोधे कार्तिके मासे शतताराकृतोदयम् योगाचार्यं कृष्णमार्यं गुरुवर्यमहं भजे कृष्णसूरीदयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्देऽहं योगदेशिकं श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste, Suprabhatam to one and all. At the outset, I would like to thank the college officials, authorities for arranging for this guest lecture. My special thanks to my dear friend Sri Udaya Subramanya for inviting me for these couple of lectures on Sankhya philosophy. So, of course, I was invited in previous couple of years also, but due to various situations and circumstances, I could not join this opportunity or take up this opportunity. Now, this corona has brought us all much more closer, albeit via this internet. Hence, so this I have the opportunity to present my talk amidst you. So, as the students of yoga, Ayurveda, it is very essential that we are equipped with various inputs, because the systems of yoga and Ayurveda, especially, they did not evolve in isolation. In the fabric of Indian intellectual traditions, there was many influences that shaped yoga Ayurveda traditions, which we are now putting to use to a very great extent. So it is very essential to understand the influences upon the systems of yoga, especially yoga and Ayurveda, that gave them the shape, that gave them the dimension, the output that we are seeing through the yogic and Ayurvedic traditions. Of course, the all our knowledge sources or systems in the country, in India, they have emerged from the fountainhead of all knowledge, that is Vedas. So from the Vedas, all traditions of knowledge, both sacred, spiritual, scientific, material, mundane, all these disciplines emerged. But even among all those systems that emerged from Vedas, there were mutual interactions, mutual give and take between various systems of knowledge. And Sankhya is one such system that had profound influences on yoga, Ayurveda, and it also had a lot of interactions with the Vedantic system also. So, thus, it becomes very essential to understand the background of Sankhya to have a good grasp of systems of philosophy in our country and also the various other knowledge systems like yoga, Ayurveda, etc. So, with this brief introduction, we will get into the topic. So, I have divided these couple of lectures into two parts. Today's lecture, today's talk will be on the history of Sankhya philosophy. So, what are the sources, how it evolved, it emerged, it attained a specific shape, form, its literature, its background, etc. And tomorrow, I will be touching upon the major philosophical tenets or the major philosophical concepts that are involved in or that are essential part of Sankhya philosophy. So, this verse is very well known to one and all. Trayi Sankhyam Yogaha Pashupatimatam Vaishnavamiti Prabhinne Prasthane Paramidamadah Pathyamiti cha Ruchinam Vaichitriad Rujukutila Nana Pathajusham Nranam Eko Gamnyas Tvamasi Payasam Arnava Iva. So this is a salutations to Lord Shiva. This is in the form of salutations to Lord Shiva. But the idea here is Trayi, the Vedas, Sankhya, Yoga, Pashupati Mata, the Pashupata system, the Vaishnava system. So in this manner, there are so many systems of philosophy in our country. But Ruchinam Vaichitriyat Rujukutila Nana Pathajusham. So because of the predispositions of individuals, there are various systems of thought. But as all the rivers ultimately attain their union with the ocean, similarly, whatever be the approach, be it the Vedic karma, yajna approach, or the Sankhyan philosophical approach, or the yogic practice approach, or the various religious approaches like Pashupata, Vaishnava, etc., all these finally lead to the ultimate reality, the truth, that is Satchidananda, the pure consciousness. So, this is a very important thought which is very essential when we go into analyzing the systems of philosophy. Though they apparently look different, so many systems, yoga, Sankhya, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, Vedanta, even among again Vedanta is Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, Dvaita, Shuddhadvaita, etc. There are varieties of thinking patterns, but there is an ultimate unifying undercurrent, that is everything ultimately leads to the Satchidananda Swarupa. So that is unique, that is special to our Indian tradition. And this thought comes from the Rig Veda itself, Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahudha Vadanti. So, this ultimate unifying principle is what distinguishes the Sanatana Dharma from other systems of religion and philosophy. So, but the point, so there may be apparent differences, but the ultimate goal is same. So it doesn't mean that we should quarrel and quibble because of differences in details. but the ultimate aim is the same. There is another dimension to this thought which is also essential. So since there is one ultimate goal which is common to everyone, so should there be only one path leading to it? No, there can be so many paths to the same destination. So this also provides opportunity to innovate, create, and improvise various paths towards the same destination, because not all of us have the same predisposition or the same pattern of thinking. Each of us have our own uniqueness. So our tradition, the Sanatana Dharma, does not impede our creativity towards the ultimate destination. So as many paths that are possible, they have to be worked out so that we can reach the final goal of Satchidananda. So this, as I mentioned, there are two ways of looking at the same thing. The differences are apparent, the goal is the same, and though the goal is same, still there can be multiplicity of paths which we can take to attain the goal. So this unity in diversity is very foundational and very important to be imbibed at the outset when we look into the systems of philosophy. Or else, as certain Western commentators write about Indian philosophy, they state that, oh, Indian systems of philosophy, they quarrel amongst each other. So that is the observation they make. It is not mere quarrel or argumentation or not mere polemics. It is to sharpen our intellect to reach the ultimate goal. So when we study about Indian philosophy, this basic clarity that is required. So with this background, we will enter. So as I mentioned, there are 6 systems of philosophy, basically of Astika Darshanas, 6 systems of Vedic philosophy, 6 systems of philosophy which accept the authority of the Vedas. And there are 3 other systems which do not accept the authority of the Vedas. Nevertheless, they are also influenced by the Vedas. As Swami Vivekananda, Maurice Bloomfield, all these scholars would put the Vedas or the Upanishads are the fountainheads of knowledge for both orthodox and heterodox systems of philosophy. Orthodox means those that accept the Vedic authority, and heterodox refers to those that do not accept the Vedic authority. So be it Jaina, Sankhya or Charvaka, all these have their origins in the Vedas. Though they are Nastika, not based on the Vedas directly, still they are influenced by Vedic thinking. So we are not concerned about the Nastika Darshanas now. We are focusing on the Astika Darshanas. You might have heard or you might have some background about the systems of philosophy. So among the Astika Darshanas, Nyaya and Vaisheshika are the pairs. So all the systems, the 6 systems of Astika Darshana, that is Vedic systems of philosophy, they come in pairs because of their the similarity, the homogeneity, or the proximity of thought pattern. So Nyaya and Vaisheshika, they form a pair. And similarly, Yoga and Sankhya, they are also philosophically connected closely with each other. And Mimamsa and Vedanta. So thus we have these 6 systems of philosophy, among which Sankhya is one of the most respected systems of philosophy, next to only to Vedanta. So the pinnacle of Indian philosophical thought, if it is reached through Vedanta, through the Advaitic and various other philosophical thoughts that was propounded by Shankaracharya and taken to the modern world through Swami Vivekananda and others, the stepping stone towards achieving that ultimate goal or ultimate fineness of the Vedanta, Sankhya has played a very important role. because the duality that is presented by Sankhya, the Prakriti Purusha Viveka that we see in Sankhya, and the creation process that is presented in Sankhya, all these have played their own influences on the Vedantic and other later systems of philosophy. And hence, Sankhya, it's very integral, or it is very important to understand Sankhya philosophy when we try to delve into any system of philosophy, be it yoga, Vedanta, Mimamsa, Nyaya, etc. So now we will just look into, before as I mentioned, we will be looking into the history of Sankhya philosophy in this talk. Before that, let us see what the meaning of the word Sankhya is. There are number of derivations to the word Sankhya in a Sanskrit to Sanskrit dictionary called Shabdakalpadruma. 3 definitions are presented to Sankhya. Basically, the word Sankhya emerges from the word Sankhya. So the first definition of Sankhya reads Sankhya Samyajnanam Tat Asti Atra Iti. Sankhya refers to correct knowledge. Sankhya means Samyajnanam. So Tat Atra Asti Iti. So that Samyajnanam, that correct knowledge, exists in this. So that in which the Samyajnana exists, that is Sankhya. So that which has the correct knowledge, that is Sankhya. That is one interpretation. Then we see Samyak Khyayate Prakashyate Vastu Tattvam Anaya iti Sankhya. So Sankhya again refers to that by which the Samyak Jnana, or the clear knowledge or the truth shines forth. So that which is that Shastra, this is Sankhya. Sankhya refers to that through which the correct knowledge shines forth. And the Shastra that is related to this Sankhya, it is called as Sankhya. So correct knowledge and true knowledge. So that which interprets the truth, or that which presents the truth. That's another interpretation. Then Samyak Jnanam Tasyam Prakashamanam Atma Tattvam Sankhyam. So Sankhya means Samyak Jnanam. So the previous definitions also gave that Sankhya means Samyak Jnanam, Vastu Tattvam. Vastu Tattvam means reality. So reality, correct knowledge. Okay. So all that is Samyak Jnanam, that is Sankhya. Tasyam Prakashamanam Atma Tattvam. So what is this correct knowledge all about? What is this correct about? What is the correct knowledge being spoken of? About the Atma Tattva, about the reality of the self. So what is the real nature of myself? Am I the body? Am I the mind? Am I the senses? Am I the prana? Or what is my real nature? So that is Samyak Jnanam, and that which so what shines through the analysis of all this? The Atma Tattvam. So Atma Tattvam becomes a Sankhyam. So the Atma Tattva, the reality of our true nature, so that becomes a Sankhya. So these are the definitions of Sankhya that we find in Shabdakalpadruma. Essentially what we understand is, from all these definitions, is a systematic, clear, unambiguous analysis of the reality of the world and also oneself, so that ultimately we understand our true nature. So this philosophical pursuit through which the material world and the inner world is analyzed, so that becomes a Sankhya. And the Amarakosha also says Charvaka Lauka Yatikau Satkarye Sankhya Kapilau. So Sankhya, so we have seen the word Sankhya and the definition of the word Sankhya. And so those who who are the adherents of Sankhya system of philosophy, they are called as a Sankhyas, and they are also called as a Kapilas. So the adherents or the followers of Sankhya system of philosophy, they are also called as Kapilas. Why are they called as Kapilas? Because the Sankhya system was founded according to all the textual evidences and references that we see. This Sankhya system of philosophy was founded by sage Kapila. Hence, the followers of Sankhya system of philosophy, they are called as Sankhyas or Kapilas. So that input we get from Amarakosha. Now, uh, in Sankhya Karika, when we think about the history of Sankhya system of philosophy, towards the end of Sankhya Karika, which is a primary foundational text, just like Yoga Sutras for Yoga system of philosophy, for Sankhya system of philosophy, Sankhya Karika is foundational. And in that Sankhya Karika, which is made up of 70 Arya verses, towards the end, we see certain hints about the history of Sankhya philosophy. Purushartha jnanamidam guhyam paramarshina samakyatam sthityutpatti pralayaha chintyante yatra bhutanam. So this verses, though towards the end, it clarifies what Sankhya is all about, and then who propounded Sankhya. So Paramarshina Samakyatam. So this has been propounded by Paramarshi. So who is that Paramarshi? Commentators like Gaudapada, who has written commentary on this text, they clarify Paramarshi here refers to sage Kapila, about whom the Amarakosha reference also spoke. Kapilas, the followers of Sankhya are Kapilas. So the one who founded, the Paramarishi, the great sage who presented this knowledge initially to the world, is Kapila. And what is discussed in this text? Sthiti, Utpatti, Pralayaha Chintyante. The existence, the creation, and the dissolution of the bhutas, of the beings that live around us. So that is analyzed, that is thought. Why should we discuss all these things? Purushartha jnanamidam. So this knowledge will lead us towards the knowledge of Purusha. So when we think about from where does this universe emerge, and in what it is established, and where does it go back, so when we analyze all these things, finally we are led to, so what is my position in this entire creation? So clarity about that emerges, and the knowledge about this has been spoken by Paramarshi. So this is the reference from Sankhya Karika. And then the next verse continues, Etat pavitram agryam munihi asuraye anukampaya dadau. So the Paramarshi who conceptualized and coded this knowledge, sage Kapila, he developed this Sankhya system, and then Etat pavitram agryam, this foremost and pure system of knowledge was given to Asuraye, Asuri. So the next in the tradition of Sankhya philosophy after Kapila is Asuri. Out of compassion, Anukampaya, Asuraye dadau. So this knowledge of Sankhya was handed down to another sage called Asuri. Asuri rapi panchashikhaya tena cha bahudha kritam tantram. So from Paramarshi Kapila, knowledge was handed down, Sankhya knowledge was handed down to Asuri, and from Asuri, Asuri also gave his knowledge in the Guru Shishya Parampara, gave it to Panchashikha, another Acharya called Panchashikha, and Tena cha bahudha kritam tantram. So then Panchashikhacharya, he developed this system in a very vast and magnificent manner. So this is the history of Sankhya in brief that we can glean from these two verses which appear towards the end of Sankhya Karika. And you should remember that the Sankhya Karika is a text that belongs to 350 CE, means we are in 2021. So this text Sankhya Karika speaks about this history of Sankhya is presented in, or this much of history of Sankhya belong to the 4th century CE, common era. So after that, a lot of water has flown down the history of Sankhya, we have to see. So from the textual background, so this is the clear reference about the Guru Parampara of Sankhya, where we see it originated from Kapila, it was handed down to Asuri, and then Panchashikhacharya, he developed it much more in a detailed manner. So this must be kept in mind. But after this Sankhya system of philosophy, it flourished a lot. We will now systematically analyze that history in much more detail. When we analyze, or when we think about the Sankhya system of philosophy in totality, in the entire span of time that can be traced, it can be seen in 3 stages. So 3 stages of Sankhya philosophy. Ancient origins of Sankhya philosophy, right from the Upanishadic and post-Upanishadic texts. So that ancient origins of Sankhya philosophy from 800 BCE to 300 CE. These are not perfect dates. These are approximations that are given by scholars. That is the first stage. So ancient hints on or origins of Sankhya philosophy, and then pre-Sankhya Karika period till 300 or 350 CE. So I just quoted from Sankhya Karika. So after this ancient origins, Sankhya literature slowly started emerging, and then Sankhya Karika of Ishvara Krishna, it marks a specific stage in the evolution of Sankhya philosophy. So from this to this period, pre-Sankhya Karika period, and then Sankhya Karika and post-Sankhya Karika literature. So from 300 or 350 CE to our present times. So thus we can see the history of Sankhya philosophy in 3 major divisions. Let us consider each of these in a little more detail, all these 3 divisions. A lot of interesting, useful, valuable ideas can be learned through this. So the oldest reference for any system of knowledge, or origins of any system of knowledge, if one has to trace, then the Rigveda Samhita is the oldest source we have to go to, because in our country, in our civilization, in this Indus Valley Saraswati civilization, in this Vedic civilization, the oldest available text is Rigveda Samhita. So in the Rigveda Samhita, there are certain ideas about philosophical thoughts which gradually might have led to the emergence of Sankhya later. For example, in the Asyavamiya Sukta, Ko Dadarsha Prathamam Jayamanam. So who saw the entire creation which was created first? So Dwa Suparna Sayuja Sakhaya, all these references about the Jivatma, Paramatma, and then cosmological thoughts. So Sankhya, as we see, it speaks about cosmology from Prakriti, Mahat, and then the the Tanmatras, the Panchabhutas, the Indriyas. So it speaks about the evolution, the emergence of the universe. So this idea of thinking about the universe, where it emerged, the cosmology, and then not only the world outside, thinking about the inner realities, our subjective reality, that our pure consciousness. So that indications on that, which later might have emerged into Sankhya, can be seen in the Asyavamiya Sukta, where we see Dvasuparna Sayuja Sakhaya speaks about the subjective reality, and Koda Dadarsha Prathamam Jayamanam speaks about the or contemplations on the objective realities. And then, of course, in the 10th mandala, we see the Purusha Sukta, Yat Purusham Vyadadhuhu Katidhavya Kalpayan. Sorry. So, Sankhya is also numbers, right? So, 3 gunas, and then Pancha Indriyas, Pancha Tanmatras. So, it is concerned with the Sankhya, number. So, here also in the Purusha Sukta, we see in how many divisions so the Purusha manifested. So those Sankhya related discussions also can have its origins, or we see the origins of the Sankhya related analysis, number, divisions. So in Purusha Sukta also, and then in Nasadiya Sukta, again we see Yam Visrishtir Yata Ababhuva. That contemplation on where has this creation emerged from. Tama asi tamasa gudhamagre praketam. Everything was tamas, everything was darkness earlier, and from there gradually the creation emerged. So the same kind of darkness existed earlier, and from there the very primordial Prakriti existed, and from that Prakriti gradually from the Mahat and other things emerged. So the directions of such thinking or the origins of such thinking can be seen in the Nasadiya Sukta also. So thus in Asyavamiya, in Purusha, in Nasadiya Suktas, there are indications of the emergence or the seeds of Sankhyan thought are sown in the very oldest literature in our Indian civilization. So the Rigveda Samhita. And then when we come to the Upanishadic lore, see, in our traditional view, the Vedas do not have any time period, but the modern Indological scholars, they have analyzed, they have even Balagangadhara Tilak and others, they have fixed or attempted to fix time period for the Vedas. So there are 2 thought patterns. One is the traditional view of Vedas being timeless, apaurusheya, and the contemporary or the later thinkers on Indology, they try to fix time period. So from that perspective, when we see Rigveda is the oldest, there also we find origins of Sankhya thought. The very Purusha is the concept later in the Purusha, Prakriti, etc. So that terminology also can be noted in Rigveda Samhita. And then after that, we see in the Upanishads also a lot of indications or origins of Sankhya philosophy. For example, we see that Yadu Rohitamiva Bhuditi Tejasastadrupamiti Tadvidan Chakruhu. Yadu Shuklamiva Bhudityapam Rupamiti Tadvidan Chakruhu. Yadu Krishnamiva Bhudityannasya Rupamiti Tadvidan Chakruhu. So in Chandogya Upanishad, there are threefold elements. So the Trivrit Karana process is discussed, where the red, white, and the black concepts, or 3 foundational, primordial, creative material are discussed. The red, white, and black. So normally those of us who know about yoga and Sankhya, this threefold division of red, white, and black, it immediately brings to our mind red for Rajas, white for Sattva, and black for Tamas. So, but in the context of the Upanishad, it is explained as red stands for Tejas, and then white stands for Apaha, water, and black stands for Annam. So, though it is interpreted as the 3 elements, see, the Tejas, Apaha, water, and Annam, but still this classification of red, white, and black, which has very clear echo in our the triguna concept. So this is another origins of the trigunas. So from this idea of trivritkarana prakriya that is spoken in the Chandogya Upanishad, again the three guna concept might have emerged. So these are the older references or older origins of the gunas that we see, which later became a very integral part of Sankhya system of philosophy. These are the ancient origins of Sankhya which we are discussing. And of course, in Kathopanishad, which is also one of the oldest Upanishads, one of the older Upanishads, we see the stacking of the evolution. So just like Prakriter Mahan Tato Hankaraha Tasmad Ganascha Shodashakaha, similarly Indriyebhya Parahyartha Arthebhyascha Paramanaha Manasastu Parabuddhihi Buddheratma Mahan Paraha. So here we see the Mahanatma, the Mahat Tattva being verbally mentioned. So again, in the process of creation, we see Mahat as a higher philosophy or higher entity that is presented, and then the Mahat is not the ultimate. Mahataha param avyaktam, avyaktat purusha paraha, purushanna parankinchit sa kashtha sa paragatihi. So then Mahat culminates in the avyakta. See, avyakta is the very terminology that is used in the Sankhya philosophy. Vyakta, avyakta, gnya. So these are the terminologies that you will see in the Sankhya philosophy. So the same terms, Mahat, avyakta, Purusha, and so what is beyond this avyakta? Purusha. So these are very clear connections that we see between the Upanishadic origins or Upanishadic connection to the Sankhya philosophy. So these are again, so we have seen.
1 second, Acharya.
Yeah.
Can you display the slides?
Which one?
Slides are not the same. Actually, only first slide is shown.
Oh. Should I replay? I will replay my slide once again. Can you see the screen?
Yes, now continue.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
So can you see this Kathopanishad quotations?
Yes.
Okay. So can you again mute that echo, please? I'm just listening the echo. Thank you. Okay. So in the Kathopanishad also we see clear origins of the later Sankhya philosophy. Now, after this, so we saw the Samhita period. Then we came to the older Upanishads like Kathopanishad and Chandogya, which are very old Upanishads prior to the emergence of any system of philosophy. And then, of course, we see another respected or older Upanishad, Shvetashvatara. So where there are again very clear indications to the emergence of Sankhya philosophy, where we see Ajamekam Lohita Shukla Krishnam Bahvih Prajas Srijamanam Sarupaha Ajohyeko Jushamano Nushete Jahatyenam Bhukta Bhogam Ajonyaha. The same mantra with a slight variation is found in the Mahanarayana Upanishad also, which is much later to the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So here again we see Ekam Ajam means one unchanging entity, Prakriti. It gives rise to low and which is constituted of Lohita, Shukla, and Krishna. So the three gunas are indicated here, and it manifests itself into various forms. And then Ajohi Ekaha, the one there is a Aja which is Prakriti, and there is a Ajaha Purushaha. He is untouched by this, and then he finally sheds the prakriti after having realized or experiencing the creation. So that this actually leads to the formulation of the concept of bhoga and apavarga, Kaivalya and Bhoga in the Sankhya philosophy later. So, thus we see that Sankhya philosophy is very firmly connected, entrenched in the Vedic Upanishadic knowledge scheme. Also, the Shvetashvatara Upanishad speaks about Rishim Prasutam Kapilam Yastam Agre Jnanair Bibharti Jayamanancha Pashyet. So, this actually speaks about the mother of Kapila. The mother of Kapila, when she was bearing Kapila in her womb, there itself she could see how the sage Kapila is going to be full of knowledge. So I'm going to be the mother of a sage Kapila from whom a lot of knowledge is going to emerge. So such was the observation of the mother of Kapila, and Kapila, as we saw earlier, is the propounder or the one who commenced or the initiated the system of Sankhya. So the clear reference to Kapila is found in Shvetashvatara. Again, Sankhya and Yoga themselves are the, so for the first time I think we see the word Sankhya being used in the Upanishadic literature, where we see Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Jo Vidadhati Kaman Tat Karanam Sankhya Yoga Dhigamyam Jnatva Devam Uchyate Sarva Papaihi. There is a typographical error here and there, so apologies for that. So Sankhya Yoga Adhigamyam. So this is the first occurrence we see of the term Sankhya, whereas the term yoga has occurred right in the Rigveda Samhita itself, but in a different sense. But in Kathopanishad, the word yoga occurs in the sense of control of the senses, etc. But for probably the first occasion, the term Sankhya has occurred in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So these are a few references of Sankhya, the ancient references to Sankhya that we see in the Upanishadic Vedic literature. So Vedas, Upanishads, they are all part of our most respected Vedic lore only. So there we find all these things, older references to Sankhya. So this is very important. This understanding is very important because there is a notion, or there is always an understanding, that we limit probably in our colleges as part of our undergraduate, postgraduate education. We just focus on just one text, learn it, and then just go ahead. But it's very essential that if a tree has to emerge and has to bear fruits, its roots are very deeply spread underground. Only when the roots are very strong, a wonderful, beautiful tree can emerge. So how can systems like Sankhya, Yoga, etc. can emerge? Because they have such wonderful, strong Vedic, Upanishadic roots. So hence they are very much integral part of our culture, civilization, and tradition. So all these inputs will serve to prove that purpose. And after the Upanishads, before the formulation or emergence of Sankhya as a separate body of philosophical knowledge, we see the tenets of Sankhya getting much more shape in the Bhagavad Gita, especially in the Bhagavad Gita, and of course in the Moksha Dharma Parva of Mahabharata also. There is a lot of discussion on Sankhya, lots of conversation between the sage Asuri, Kapila, all that is presented there in Mahabharata. And in Bhagavad Gita, it is full of Sankhya wisdom. Just as Bhagavad Gita is a repository of yogic knowledge, Vedantic knowledge, similarly in Bhagavad Gita also there is a repeated occurrence of Sankhyan knowledge system. So we see the word Purusha, Vakhya, Yoga, Prakriti, Gunatraya Vibhaga, all these repeatedly occurring. I'll just present a few verses from the Bhagavad Gita which will highlight the very strong Sankhya thoughts that are presented in the Bhagavad Gita. So can you still see the screen? Is there any problem? Can you see all these verses from Bhagavad Gita that I am displaying?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So we see in the third chapter, Karyate Hyavashah Karma Sarvaha Prakriti Jaihi Gunaihi. So the Prakriti and the Gunas are mentioned here. Then Prakritim Purushanchaiva Vidhyanadi Ubhavapi. So Prakriti Purusha. And these two are eternal, the eternity of Prakriti and Purusha. And Vikaramscha Gunamschaiva. So Gunas, Prakriti, Purusha. To that we have references in Bhagavad Gita. Then we have Purushaha Prakristhohi Bhungte Prakritijan Gunan Karanam Gunasangosya Sadasadyoni Janmasu. So this 13th chapter verse also, especially the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, is full of Sankhya philosophical thoughts. Of course, in other chapters also we have references, like just like in the 14th chapter, 18th chapter, where the three gunas are analyzed. There also we have Sankhya inputs, but especially 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is full of such a Sankhya wisdom. So here also Purusha, Prakriti, Guna Sangha, Prakritim Purushancha Gunaisaha. All these are Sattvam, Rajas, Tamayiti, Gunaha, Prakriti Sambhavaha. So the three gunas are mentioned, and all the three gunas are defined and discussed in the 14th chapter, which is Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. Sattvam Sukhe Sanjayati Rajah Karmani Bharata Jnanam Avrityatu Tamaha Pramade Sanjayatyuta. So all those three gunas are analyzed, and then the Avyakta and Vyakta. So that is also discussed, which are Sankhyan terminologies, which will be later adopted by Sankhya literature in a profuse manner. So the Vyakta Vyakta terminology is also there. Mahabhutani Ahankaraha Buddhihi Avyaktamevacha. So again the Sankhyan evolution process is mentioned. And then Yesha te bhita Sankhye Buddhiri yoge tvimam shrunu. So yoga and Sankhya are spoken here. As we saw in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, yoga and Sankhya being mentioned, here also in Bhagavad Gita, Sankhya and yoga are mentioned together. Though Shankaracharya interprets Sankhya as clear knowledge about the Atman, and yoga as Karma Yoga, the practice of Karma Yoga, but still the terminology, the origins of the terminology of Sankhya and yoga, they are to be clearly noted in this Bhagavad Gita verse. Jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam sankhya yogau prithak balaha, etc. And then here also in the 13th chapter we find, see, Sankhyena yogena karma yogena chapare. So what is the way to realize the Atman? So certain people do dhyana, certain people they use their mind, and anye Sankhyena yogena, they use the Sankhyan methodology of analyzing the Prakriti Purusha, and others they use Karma Yoga. So in realizing the self, what are the various paths? So by almost this quotation from Bhagavad Gita says, shows that by the time Bhagavad Gita was being taught, or it emerged, already Sankhya, the seeds of Sankhya have been sown, and the philosophical output of Sankhya philosophy already had started emerging. So the Bhagavad Gita accepts Sankhya as a means to realize the self, or to see the self. So these are clear indications about the origins of Sankhya philosophy. And so we saw thus far the Vedic literature, Rigveda Samhita, Chandogya Upanishad, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, and now we saw Bhagavad Gita. All these are prior literature. Even in Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, which are attributed towards the beginning of the common era, there are also so many philosophical tenets which might have been derived, or which might have been influenced by the Sankhyan analysis. So in Ayurveda, especially based on Charaka and Sushruta Samhita, we see the same three pramanas that is acceptable to the Sankhya philosophy also, Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama, and then the classification of ailments and sufferings, the Tapatraya, the Adhyatmika, Adibhautika, Adidaivika. So that is originally a Sankhyan thought, which we can see in the Samhita literature of Ayurveda, and Purusha Bahutvam, the multiplicity of the Purushas, then the Satkarya Vada, about which we will be speaking tomorrow. So that is acceptable. That is also acceptable to the Ayurvedic system, and of course the Triguna Vyavastha. So all these commonalities that we see are the origins of the Sankhya thoughts. So these are found in the Ayurvedic lore also. So as I said initially, that no system evolved in isolation in our country. So there were give and takes, giving and taking of, or exchanging or sharing of common wisdom. So the Sankhya might have led to the emergence of these ideas or acceptances in Ayurveda, and later these ideas which gained popularity might have been further consolidated in later Sankhya texts like Sankhya Karika. Thus, but these thoughts like Purusha Bahutva, Satkaryavada, the three gunas, they are uniquely Sankhyan in nature, so which have influenced Ayurveda also. And then not only this, we see, as I mentioned, in Moksha Dharma Parva of Mahabharata, we see Sankhya discussion, and then in Buddha Charita of Ashwaghosha, there are references as to how Buddha studied Sankhya. And interestingly, the birthplace of Buddha is called as Kapila Vastu. Kapila, we saw that is the name of the originator of the system of Sanskrit. Scholars do they have different opinion about what this Kapila Vastu in the birthplace of Buddha so means. So some agree that it is the place where Kapila existed, the sage Kapila of Sankhya existed. Some others say it just indicates the color of the land. So there are so many such thoughts, but still Ashwaghosha in Buddha Charita, he clearly notes or shows that Buddha also exposed himself to Sankhya philosophy. So on Buddhism also there has been influence of Sankhya, or the tenets of Buddhism when they emerged or evolved, they had an awareness of this Sankhya philosophy. And interestingly, even in Kautilya Arthashastra, we find Sankhya being mentioned. Trayi, Varta, Anvikshiki, Dandaniti. So in the beginning, Kautilya Acharya, he mentions how various systems of knowledge are to be mastered by a prospective king. So whoever wants to become a king, he has to equip himself with various systems of knowledge like Trayi, Varta, Dandaniti, and Anvikshiki. So under Anvikshiki, so many systems of philosophy like Nyaya, Vaisheshika, etc. are mentioned. Under Anvikshiki, philosophical knowledge, that is to view things from a higher perspective, from a deeper perspective. Sankhya knowledge is also mentioned as very important prerequisite. So, and of course, in Manusmriti and in Puranas also, means Puranas are placed anywhere. Some Purana, for example, the Bhagavata Purana is placed around 9th and 10th century, but there are certain older Puranas like Vishnu Purana, which are earlier to Sankhya Karika, that is, which are in the beginning of the common era. So such older Puranas, Manusmriti, Arthashastra, Buddha Charita, and references in Mahabharata, all these show various stages of evolution, emergence, germination of Sankhya philosophy. These are the traces. So we can say that this is the proto-Sankhya. Proto-Sankhya period means when Sankhya was gathering its philosophical thoughts. So this is the period which we can say before, from the Upanishads till the beginning of the Common Era. So this was the period of Proto Sankhya, where so many references to the Sankhyan knowledge it existed. So this is the first phase of Sankhya philosophy. Thus, we can see that already in the Proto Sankhyan period, we see Purusha, Prakriti, the idea of evolution, the three gunas, though all this might not have been consolidated and put into one manual, or if it had been put, so that text is also not available, but still the external references to all this indicate that those ideas, they existed either in a fragmented manner in various literature like the Vedas, Upanishads, the Puranas, and Itihasa like Mahabharata. So this can be stated as the first stage of evolution of Sankhya. I think I can go on for some 15-20 minutes and then open up for questions. Can I go on for some more time? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have some more time to.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So we just saw the first period of Sankhya. Now, initially I mentioned that there are 3 time periods of Sankhya. We just completed the first phase. Now we move to the second phase of Sankhya philosophy, which is clarified by the philosophical historians of Sankhya as a pre-Sankhya Karika period. Excuse me. So, after the Upanishads and other such literature, we see from later references that before the text Sankhya Karika came, few other Sankhya texts existed. So we see, as I mentioned earlier, Kapila as a propounder of Sankhya philosophy, he seems to have written a Sankhya Sutra literature, as was common to all systems of philosophy. We have Yoga Sutra, we have Mimamsa Sutra, we have Vedanta Sutra, Nyaya Sutra, Vaisheshika Sutra. All these sutras existed. So there are references to the existence of Sankhya Sutra by Kapila, the older one. Of course, there is a later Sankhya Sutra which comes later. Its periodicity is clearly fixed to 14th century, but there are also references to the existence of an older Sankhya Sutra by Kapila. And we saw earlier in the comment in the verse from Sankhya Karika that Paramarshi, that is Kapila, gave this knowledge to Asuri, and then from Asuri it was given to Panchashikhacharya, and then we see that Panchashikhacharya wrote a massive work which seems to have elaborated the Sankhya philosophy that was presented in the Sutra literature, and that text is called as Shashti Tantra. So this is again the Sankhya Sutra is not available. Similarly, only the name of the text Shashti Tantra is known, but Shashti Tantra in itself is just known only by its name. It is a massive work based on Kapila Sutras. Again, who is the author of this Shashti Tantra? Again, there are multiplicity of views on this. Some say that Kapila himself has expanded this Sankhya Sutra as Shashti Tantra, or some others say it is another Acharya called Varshaganya. But most scholars, they see that this Shashti Tantra was written by Panchashikhacharya. We find the reference to Panchashikhacharya in the Vyasa's commentary to Yoga Sutra also. So there is no doubt that Panchashikha was a very respected Sankhya teacher, So there is a possibility that he has written this Shashti Tantra. So where 10 plus 50, 10 Mulika Arthas, 10 fundamental principles, and 50 Padarthas. So these combine to give 60 Tattvas in Sankhya. So hence it is called as a Shashti Tantra. So then other acharyas prior to Sankhya Karika are also known, like Vindhyavasa or Vindhyavasi, Madhava, Panchadhikarana, Paurika, etc. So some other scholars are of the view that the Vindhyavasa, Sankhya-acharya Vindhyavasa, because of some manuscript corruption, later came to be known as Vedavyasa. So to whom is the Vyasa Bhashya of Yoga Sutra is attributed to. So such acharyas also existed in pre-Sankhyan period like these, and only these many ideas. And there seems to be another sage called Patanjali who spoke only on Sankhya philosophy. So such Patanjali also existed, and the Patanjali of Yoga Sutra should also be mentioned in this pre-Sankhya Karika period, because in Patanjali Yoga Sutra there is a lot of influence of Sankhya, and hence he should also be a well-versed acharya in Sankhya. So among this list of acharyas like Kapila, Asuri, Panchashikha, Varshaganya, Madhava, Panchadhikarana and Paurika, Patanjali should also be included as an acharya in this second stage. But unlike the first stage, where there are innumerable scattered references in various kinds of literature from Puranas to the Veda Samhitas and the Upanishads, so this period there are only scarce references about this. Only from later discussions, philosophical discussions, this period, this second period of Sankhya evolution, the pre-Sankhya period, so that can be guessed. So only a very little amount of knowledge exists about this pre-Sankhya Karika period. So all the texts that existed before Sankhya Karika, be it Kapila's Sankhya Sutra or Shashti Tantra or any other work by acharyas like Varshaganya and Panchashika, etc., seems to have been lost in that period. So their names only are available during the second period, which is pre-Sankhya Karika period. So now this leads us to the Sankhya Karika period, and then the post Sankhya Karika literature. So Sankhya Karika and post Sankhya Karika. So if we take the proto Sankhya Karika, proto Sankhya period till the Common Era, so the first 300 years of the Common Era can be termed as pre-Sankhya Karika period. So from the 4th century, so 4th century is the period of Sankhya Karika. From 4th century till the current times is the third period that we are going to study, and this is very important period. We see, according to scholars, Sankhya Karika period has been given as 350 to 450 CE. So 4th and 5th century of the Common Era. And this Sankhya Karika is a very important text that summarizes, that presents, that consolidates. It is by the grace of God, it seems that this text came to existence. If this text did not exist, if Ishvara Krishna did not consolidate Sankhya Karika, Sankhya knowledge might have been lost forever. So it was very critical that Ishvara Krishna consolidated all pre-existing Sankhya knowledge in the form of Sankhya Karika. Ishvara Krishna is the name of the author, and Sankhya Karika is the name of the text. Even now, most of our studies in Sankhya is based on the work of Ishvara Krishna. So there are 70 verses which consolidates all, basically 70 verses. There are variant numbers, just like there are varying numbers of Yoga Sutra. So they say 194 sutras, 195 sutras, 196 sutras, depending upon how we split certain sutras. Similarly, this Sankhya Karika has verses anywhere between 69 to 73 verses. So basically it is a Saptati, around Saptati. This is the number of the verses of Sankhya Karika. And then interestingly, after Sankhya Karika or closely connected with Sankhya Karika is another text called as Swarna Saptati or Kanaka Saptati. It's interesting that a person called Paramartha, he was a person who was a Sanskrit scholar who existed immediately after Ishvara Krishna. He translated this Sankhya Karika, the 70 odd verses of Sankhya Karika, into Chinese, along with a commentary, probably the Mathara commentary to Sankhya Karika. And that Chinese translation of Sankhya Karika, when it was retranslated, then it was called as Swarna Saptati, the 70 golden teachings. So Swarna Saptati Shastra or Kanaka Saptati Shastra. So it went to China and then it was retranslated into Sanskrit. So that gives us another version of Sankhya Karika. Not much of a difference can be noted from Sankhya Karika to this Kanaka Saptati or Swarna Saptati. It's a very clear very clear commonalities are seen between Sankhya Karika and this Swarna Saptati Shastra or Kanaka Saptati Shastra. But the commentary therein, there is a new commentary. So it appears to be a new commentary. Along with the Karikas, a commentary was also translated to Chinese and retranslated back into Samskrita. So then it happens. So the scholars are of various views as to what the Sanskrit commentary be. So certain people say that it may be the Gaudapada's commentary, or most scholars they feel that it may be the commentary of Mathara, which was translated into Chinese and then came back. So these are interesting informations, how the Chinese Buddhism was interested in Sankhya philosophy and how it regarded Sankhya knowledge. So these Sankhya teachings were called as golden. So Swarna Saptati, Kanaka Saptati, that is the terminology that they gave and the respect to this knowledge. So you can see, so that much of a importance has been associated or connected to the Sankhyan wisdom. So these are the two texts initially when we see, and then upon the Sankhya Karika of Ishvara Krishna in about 70 verses, so there are lots of commentaries. So the future of Sankhya from the 4th, 5th century, it is centered around on Sankhya Karika only. We see that Gaudapada Bhashya is the oldest of the Sankhya Karika commentaries. It is not the first and the last commentary. There are so many commentaries on Sankhya Karika, like Yukti Deepika. Though this Yukti Deepika is closer to the period of Gaudapada, it is only in recently, that is 1950s, 1960s only, this Yukti Deepika was rediscovered. Until then, people were aware of Gaudapada Bhashya and of course a few other commentaries. But this Yukti Deepika, which is a very important old systematic commentary closer to the period of Gaudapada, it also existed. But the author of the Yukti Deepika is not known, but it contains a lot of valuable information about Sankhya tradition and philosophy. Then after that comes Jayamangala commentary to Sankhya Karika. Some feel it might have been written by Shankaracharya because it comes closer to the period of Adi Shankaracharya, and also there are certain indications in that to that end, but it's not settled with the finality whether the author of Jayamangala is Shankaracharya. And then comes the Mathara commentary to Sankhya Karika. Mathara belonged to somewhere in the region of Maharashtra. And then comes an important commentary to Sankhya Karika, the Tattva Kaumudi, Sankhya Tattva Kaumudi by Vachaspati Mishra. In the 9th or 10th century, we see Vachaspati Mishra's Tattva Kaumudi. So after Gaudapada Bhashya and Tattva Kaumudi becomes another important text upon which so many further sub-commentaries were written. So because Vachaspati Mishra, because of his scholarship in various systems of philosophy, Everyone might be aware that Vachaspati Mishra wrote a text for Vedanta. It is a bhashya on Shankaracharya's commentary to Brahma Sutra. So it is the Bhamati Vyakhya, and then in Yoga, for Yoga Sutra he wrote Tattva Vaisharadi, and then for Sankhya he has written Tattva Kaumudi. In this way, for each and every system of philosophy he had contributed. So, and hence he was a great philosopher, great scholar, and hence in the Sankhya system of philosophy, his Tattva Kaumudi is studied a lot, commented a lot, and the philosophical explanations of Sankhya philosophy are derived mostly from the elaborations given by Vachaspati Mishra to this. So hence it's a very important commentary. After that also, so many other commentaries emerged like Sankhya Chandrika, Sankhya Taru Vasanta, and so many other commentaries they emerged. I'm just pointing out a few important commentaries. And also we can see that there is a continuity of commentaries. It doesn't end. So normally when we see just one commentary, one text. Maybe Gaudapada Bhashya and Sankhya Karika is introduced in as part of our curriculum, but there is an unending history of commentaries throughout the ages. So it has the commentary literature. It is true to Yoga Sutra also. We see Vyasa's commentary in the 4th or 5th century, and after that we see a continuous flow of various commentaries. So we see again Vachaspati Mishra's commentary, then Shankara Vivarana, then Vijnana Bhikshu's commentary on Yoga Sutra, which is Yoga Vartika, and then Bhojaraja and Sadashiva Brahmendra. So there is a continuity of knowledge transfer or newer analysis of Sankhya philosophy that we can see. So undying tradition of Sankhya, it existed. So these are the commentaries to Sankhya Karika. As I mentioned about Sankhya Tattva Kaumudi on Sankhya Karika, written by Vachaspati Mishra. Upon that Sankhya Tattva Kaumudi, again a lot of commentators have written sub-commentaries like Sankhya Tattva Vibhakara, Upodghata, Avaranavarani, Vidvattoshini, Sarabodhini. In this way, so many sub-commentaries existed. If you can observe the names here, the philosophers of the Bengal region, the Gauda Desha, so they have taken Sankhya, or they looked into Sankhya based on the exposition of Vachaspati Mishra. So basically these scholars are from the eastern Bengal region, and they commented profusely. So they wanted to understand more about Sankhya, and they did their exposition based on Vachaspati Mishra's Tattva Kaumudi. So that's why they are Gaudiya tradition sub-commentaries we can see. And then next important, so we saw that Sankhya Karika and its commentaries and sub-commentaries. So that is one important text in Sankhya. But there are a few other such texts which exist, which are not known, just like Sankhya Karika in Sankhya philosophy. The other text is Tattva Samasa Sutra. So another text, it's a very short verse, very short work, composed in 13th or 14th or 15th century. So that is equal to that of Sankhya Karika in Sankhya philosophy as Sankhya Karika, but it cannot be equated to Sankhya Karika, but it's an independent work. So just like Sankhya Karika, this is another independent work. Of course, Sankhya Tattva Samasa Sutra has its influences from Sankhya Karika, and it is attributed to Kapila, but scholars are of a view that it's a later text. It has only 21 sutras. In 21 sutras, it summarizes, just like 70 Karikas of Sankhya Karika, in just 21 sutras, it covers the entire Sankhya philosophy. And so on this Tattva Samasa Sutra, just like Sankhya Karika has a lot of commentary literature, this Tattva Samasa Sutra also has a lot of commentary literature. So this you can see so the Tattva Samasa Sutras are presented in just one slide. Ashtau Prakritayah, Shodasha Vikaraha, Purushaha, Traigunyam, Sancharaha, Pratisancharaha. So Trividham Pramanam, Trividho Bandhaha, Trividho Mokshaha, all the divisions of Sankhya. Because Sankhya is all about Sankhya, the numbers. So Ashta, Shodasha, Traigunyam, Pancha, Pancha Karmatmanaha, Pancha Avidya. So all Sankhya related summarization, all the divisions of Sankhya has been captured in this 21 succinct Tattva Samasa Sutras. And on these Tattva Samasa Sutras, so many commentaries that explained the meaning of this 21 sutras. So that literature grew. Kramadipika, Tattva Yatharthya Deepana, Sankhya Tattva Vivechana, and Tattva Samasa Bhashya. So all these texts, they existed. And then after Tattva Samasa Sutra, we find another text called as Sankhya Sutras, Sankhya Sutras. So equal to, so independent work, but scholars believe that Sankhya Sutra is again an elaboration of the Tattva Samasa Sutras. It might have emerged in the period 14th or 15th century. So it is basically a recasting of Sankhya Karika, but in a sutra style. So Sankhya Sutras, according to the scholarly analysis, they contain the same Sankhya Karika principle, but in the sutra format. But this Sankhya Sutra is not mentioned in the Sarvadarshana Sangraha of 14th century. So it should have come after the 14th century Sarvadarshana Sangraha of Madhava. But scholars are also of the view that some of the sutras in Sankhya Sutra might have ancient origins, but not the entire text. This Sankhya Sutras themselves come in, it's a lot of sutras are there, about 300 odd verses sutras are there in 6 chapters. There is Vishayadhyaya, Pradhana Karyadhyaya, Vairagyadhyaya, Akhyayikadhyaya, Parapaksha Nirjayadhyaya, Shashthatantradhyaya. So many such divisions or chapters are given. So in this way, so this Sankhya Sutras, they come in 6 chapters, and the number of sutras are also there for each of this. It's interesting to note that this Sankhya Sutra also has stories and illustrations. As it is a philosophical text which has polemics or arguments against it, so there are also stories and narratives which elaborate the philosophy or help to give illustrations. These are texts which are not at all studied. People basically focus on Sankhya Karika and finish it, whereas these are interesting inputs. Just as I mentioned, Tattva Samasa Sutras are not studied in our current day. Sankhya Karika, the Sankhya Sutras are not studied, so which contain interesting inputs like stories and narratives. And again, on this Sankhya Sutras, further we have lot of commentaries like Sankhya Sutra Vivritti, Sankhya Pravachana Bhashya. Vijnana Bhikshu's commentary to Sankhya Pravachana Bhashya is very important. Then various other commentaries, right from 14th century till the 20th century, Sankhya commentary literature, Sankhya Sutra commentary literature is also existent. And apart from that, we also have other independent Sankhya texts. So we saw Sankhya Karika, Tattva Samasa Sutras, and then Sankhya Sutras and their commentary literature. Apart from that, there are other interesting texts like Gunatraya Viveka by Swayam Prakashayati. So it is 50 shlokas which analyzes the permutations and combinations of the 3 gunas. So the author concludes that there are 39 types of combination of the gunas that are possible. This text is not yet to be published, translated, studied. So this text exists in Adayar Oriental Manuscript Library. And the Sankhya Tattva Pradipa, it's an independent manual. It gives an overview of Sankhya based on Tattva Kaumudiya Vachaspati Mishra. And then another interesting important text is Sankhya Tattva Loka, written by Hariharananda Aranya in the 20th century. So in this text, it's very important to note that he brings together Sankhya and Yoga philosophy. It's a composite. The scholars describe this work as composite Sankhya Yoga work. It not merely discusses Sankhya, it also brings in yoga and systematically analyzes and presents. So, in about 72 paragraphs, just like Sankhya Karika in 70 shlokas, in 72 paragraphs, Hariharananda Aranya, he systematically brings together Sankhya and Yoga. And of course, the Sankhya Rahasya, Sankhya Siddhanta Paramarsha, and Sankhya Paribhasha, all such texts exist. So, thus, we see that the Sankhya system of philosophy can be seen in three distinct periods, that is, the proto-Sankhyan period, where the Veda, from the Vedas and the Upanishads, the Sankhya emerged, and then we just saw that very briefly, and then the pre-Sankhya Karika period, where Kapila, Asuri, Panchashikha, Patanjali, and other sages existed. They presented, but most of their views are lost. And then Sankhya Karika and post Sankhya Karika period, which is the period which is rich in knowledge, where we see the Sankhya Karika, Tattva Samasa Sutra, Sankhya Sutras, Tattva Kaumudi, and so many other independent works. So this in brief is an introduction, or this in brief an overview of Sankhya Shastra Itihasa. So I end my talk here. I am open to any questions. So depending on my understanding, I will try to answer the questions.
I think there are no doubts, sir. Clearly, Dr. Jayaraman sir was explained the history of Sankhya philosophy, chronology of Sankhya philosophy, and text and different authors of Sankhya philosophy. And tomorrow there will be question and answer session. 15 minutes we can spare for only for question and answer. Now only we can note down. So it was a wonderful ocean of knowledge have explained in 1 hour. So you might have taken 10 hours to prepare for this lecture. So it's a busy schedule. So he is more on in the research field. So published more than 20 papers, research papers on yogic literature, Sankhya literature, Vedanta literature, on Prayatna Shaitilya, Ananta Samapatti, Asana, definition of asana, and all these literature reviews have published in many yogic journals, national and international journals. Okay. Thank you, Acharya.
Thank you.
Anything you wanted to say, Acharya?